How many Nebraska players and recruits end up at Florida State?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. This is going to be a really wild next 5 to 10 days for Florida State. And I'm going to go over the recruits that Nebraska might lose to Florida State. Going to talk about some of the younger players. But most importantly today, it's the guys that are either already in the portal from Nebraska or guys that would fit the scheme that Tony White is going to be implementing for the Noles. And he also used at Nebraska, so it's plug and play. That's what we're going to start with now. And just a note, on signing day, there will be multiple podcasts, but the big podcast will be in the evening. Going to do a live show after 9 o'clock Eastern, after everything is settled, because there's going to be a lot of ins and outs. Just want to throw that out there. So let's get started and talk about some of the guys that should be discussed first and foremost. I don't have a specific order per se, but the first player I'm going to talk about is the most likely, shall we say, plug and play guy. And it's one that has ties to the South. That's Jamari Butler. He's from Mobile. So he's roughly 3.5 hours away from Tallahassee, where he grew up. But he is a Nebraska Cornhusker that is going into the portal, allegedly. We'll see how that comes to fruition. By the way, anything that you see on X or anything else, it's not official because the portal has not officially opened. Their intentions are there. Things could change. There will be many players, I can guarantee you, that say they're going to enter and then, hey, somebody says from that school, we'll pay you more money, or their parents decide, you need to stay. They talk them out of it. So keep that in mind. But right now, Jamari Butler is a guy that a lot of people are talking about, and quite honestly, they should. He's a power player. He's a guy that can take an inside pass rush move and defeat an interior offensive lineman or an offensive tackle, not just with quickness and length, but with sheer strength. This is something I like to talk about a lot. There is no substitute on offensive or defensive line, and to some extent linebacker, for multiple years of being healthy and going through an off-season conditioning program, and the strength program to that point is vital. This kid has done well. I can tell you just by watching a little bit of film, Jamari Butler is the kind of defensive end you want, 6'4", 6'5", 260. If you're going to play a three-man front, he could probably play stand-up or down. He's athletic enough to do either, but he'll probably put his hand in the dirt if he ends up at Florida State or anywhere else. This is the kind of player Florida State could use right away. He's only got 1 year left, but here are the numbers that he's had the last two seasons. 2023, so a year ago, 34 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, a couple pass breakups, and a forced fumble. This season, 22 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 5 quarterback hurries. The thing that is really interesting isn't just sacks. It's not just how many times you create a pressure or whatever in general, but what are you doing consistently? And do they use you, whatever school you're at, in passing situations? So I looked at how many pass rushes he had on PFF. Okay, 22 out of 212 snaps that he was after the quarterback, he was credited with the pressure. Now, that's subjective. I 100% get that. But even if you cut that in half, it's not a bad stat. And he's pretty good right now with 22 over 212. Yeah, you'll take that every time. That's over 10%. And if you're able to get home in that capacity, sometimes the pressure is actually better than a sack, because quarterbacks, at the college level especially, will throw it up. And they shouldn't. Creating turnovers is still the number one reason from a statistical standpoint that a team will lose or win a football game. So getting pass rush is vital. I think that it's pretty safe that Tony or anybody else that ends up off that staff, and there could be other guys, who knows, Knighton, I'm sure they would love to keep, but maybe Nebraska makes Knighton their defense coordinator. I don't know. But if Nebraska loses anybody, one could argue that Jamari Butler is the guy that Florida State would do the best to gain. for instant impact. Now, again, he's only got 1 year, but he's proven he has the size, and it's a position of need that's quite honestly an impact position. In a 3-man line, having talented pass rushers that can win with inside or outside moves is a rare commodity. I think Butler would be a huge pickup for not just Florida State, but for anybody if he does officially go into the portal. I don't put a lot of stock in what kids say right now. There's a lot of names that are out there because they posted something on Twitter or somebody that has a source. But again, the portal is not officially open just yet. Mekhi Jabair, I'm probably mispronouncing that name, another linebacker / edge guy, like he could play inside or outside as a backer. This is an interesting player because he's only been there 2 years. I like him because the biggest knock historically for linebackers in a 3-4 is they usually aren't the greatest coverage guys. They're a little bigger, a little bulkier, so they don't have the same flexibility, the same ability to put their foot in the ground and change direction. Like if you're going against Jalen Lucas, for instance, the guy that missed quite a bit of this past season for us, not many DBs are going to cover him. Linebacker, that's not going to work. But at least against a tight end or a traditional running back, this guy had a 64.8 PFF grade in coverage. That's really good. So he's got a couple of years of eligibility. So this would be a player that, again, we've talked about this a million times on Locked On Seminoles. Nebraska, they've done a good job at their spot in maximizing. Well, Florida State didn't recruit. They did a pretty good job coaching them up this year as the year went on, but they still had a lot of run gap fits and stuff like that were iffy. This guy had 23 stops, too. He's 230. He'd be a plug-and-play guy. This year he had 49 tackles, 6 tackles for loss and a sack, 3 pass breakups, 3 quarterback hurries. You cannot substitute experience in a brand new scheme. Like the scheme that FSU ran was massively different than the one that Nebraska did. So Tony coming down, he's going to have a lot of different guys he's going to probably bring in from different places, not just Nebraska, but it's going to be a learning curve and a massive one. Totally different scheme. So with that, if you can get, it doesn't have to be Mekhi, but you need one. Honestly, you need one of the linebackers from Nebraska to come down. I know this is not friendly. I'm not saying they're going to try to just go poach all the Nebraska kids, but linebackers make the checks at the line of scrimmage. They set guys up. They move the defensive linemen. It is paramount that you have somebody that is already familiar with Tony's scheme that's playing linebacker. If you want to maximize, obviously you can do it without it, but is that going to be your best bet to improve your defense? No. This would be a great guy to do that. There's another guy that I don't know if he would be interested. He'd be a 6th-year guy next year, Stephon Thompson, another linebacker, 27 tackles. He was a backup for most of the games. He started one game that was the one that Mekhi didn't. That could be another possibility. He's got pretty good size too. Just to have him, let's say Mekhi doesn't go to Florida State. Have him there to help the younger guys to learn the scheme. Maybe he's a starter, he's a co-starter or something this year, this next season. That wouldn't be a bad idea either. Not every transfer you get, and this, while I'm focusing on Nebraska players here because you just got the defensive coordinator from there, keep in mind, anybody that has a vast amount of experience at like middle linebacker, inside linebacker, free safety, something where you're calling defenses, even if it's a totally different defense, is something that coordinators and coaches in general will likely covet. They want somebody that's been in a position of leadership and has responsibility and shown success. That's just like any other business. Florida State football is no different. It is a business too. James Williams, this is arguably the most unique one to me. It's a kid that's been through a lot. He had a tragedy in his family that he's helped through, and really long defensive lineman, 6'6", 250. He's got 2 years of eligibility. He's not a big numbers guy in terms of tackles, but this is what he had this year. He's a guy that's going to get after quarterback and get up the field. Probably needs to be more balanced, but 14 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and 4 quarterback hurries. He's kind of started to take those steps. And again, he's had some off the field issues that, aren't his fault. But if he left Nebraska, he would have a plethora of options. Unique to find 6'6", 250 with some experience in that scheme. It would be a huge benefit to Florida State if he came. When we come back, we're going to talk about some more Nebraska defensive players that I think could end up transferring and benefit Florida State. That's next here on Locked On Seminoles. Have you downloaded the Gametime app yet? Gametime allows you and your friends and family to get to events like concerts, plays, even go to the movie theater in addition to Major League Baseball, Florida State football, NFL, and get really great deals. This is how it works. Just download it on your phone, go into the app and type in something like Atlanta Falcons, Florida State Seminoles, whatever it may be. Find a game that you want to go to, click on it, and you can even see your seat. When you click on it, the view at that venue, whether it's a play, whether it's a game, whatever it may be, right from your handheld cell phone. That's pretty easy, and that's why I like it. It's very convenient. And there's something else that they've done. If you're not exactly sure what you're looking for, but you're looking for a bargain, Gametime Picks. It's something they've added to the Gametime app. It helps filter out some of the other stuff, and it's just good deals. They'll have those there for you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Florida State probably would like to get, just in general, kids to come home that didn't end up at Florida State out of high school. Maybe they didn't recruit him. Maybe they ran out of space. For whatever reason, the kid wasn't interested. Whatever. There are different reasons for it. I have no idea if this young man would be interested. Maybe he just wants to stay at Nebraska, but he played at Miami Central. Vincent Shavers is a linebacker that's interesting. I don't know what the deal is with his situation. Maybe he's just happy there regardless. I'm just throwing this out, but he's a Miami kid. He had 19 tackles and a half tackle for loss this year as a freshman. That's somebody to think about. A kid that, again, also fits that front seven and fits the 3-4 or the 3-3-5, whatever scheme you want to call it. This one is really unique because, again, length, experience, multiple years of eligibility all apply. Princewell Umanellan, 13 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, a half sack, a pass breakup. He had 18 pressures out of 110 snaps. And I've seen a little film. He's an instinctive guy, and he's been coached. There was a clip where Tony was talking about him in coverage. He dropped, took away the slant, and then as soon as the quarterback, okay, I can't throw it there, there's no opening, he immediately turns to his number 2, and it's just a little short flat route by the running back. Princewell just smoked this kid. He downhill, ran right through the guy. It was a textbook play from start to finish. If you're instinctive like that, that's good, but you've also taken the coaching as a sophomore and they're putting you in those situations. Nebraska's coaching staff did a great job in general, but he was beating out guys that were older for playing time, and he can do that. He's got 2 years left. I would be shocked if he doesn't have opportunities. A lot of opportunities. I'm sure Florida State would be happy to get it. One player that I really want to mention that it would be great for Florida State, and I have no idea what his intentions are. He's from LA, went to SC first, then transferred to Nebraska. Sierra Wright. This kid I interviewed a number of years ago when he's coming out of high school. 35 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, a sack, a couple picks, 5 pass breakups. He's 5'11", 6 foot. I think, barring something surprising, Ezra is going to leave. He's going to go to the NFL. Florida State, you can never have enough corners. Surtain's an easy guy to be able to sell to somebody. If he transferred to Florida State, it would not shock me. Now, he's already halfway across the country at Nebraska. This is just a different direction because he is an LA kid. But that would be a nice plug-and-play situation because, again, even though it's not as difficult as the front seven is, that's the more important area for Florida State to hit if they're going to get some of these Nebraska kids. But Sierra is a guy that would also know the back end. Tony is a guy that's coached defensive backs. If he has Surtain, that would be a really, really big win. I think that would be a natural fit. 6th-year senior with a lot of experience from a program that has shown good defense, and he's a guy that can help some of the other guys adapt to the system. It's just a win across the board. Will he come? I have no idea. I don't know what his intentions are. But I'm telling you, Sierra Wright is the kind of kid that I think could fit in anywhere. Again, I interviewed him a number of years ago. Really good guy. I think he could fit in any program from Boston College to UCLA. It wouldn't matter. So Florida State would do well to get him. Now I want to transition to something that's a little bit different. Keep in mind with the following, location matters. The 2024 recruits, there's one kid in particular, I just kind of browsed through the Nebraska list. If anybody that's younger that hasn't played a lot, kind of fit the profile, this is the guy that I think is most likely that fits the profile, like trying to, again, D-line. Can't have enough. Kiana Davis, 6'5", 255, had 9 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. He's out of Texas. That's a guy that I think if he wanted to come, he would only be a sophomore next year. It's hard to turn down talented defensive linemen. They'd have shown at least a little bit. They got some pretty good defensive linemen in Nebraska. They did a nice job. They've coached them up. They fit the profile of what they want to do defensively, and they've made it happen. But if he wanted to come, I mean, he's not plug and play. May need a little more seasoning this next year. But even if he was just a special teams guy and circumstantially he comes in for 15 snaps a game next year, he might have 2 more years to do that and get better. Maybe he's even good enough to turn pro after his junior year. You don't know. But the size and the measurables, Kiana Davis is somebody to look at. Moving to the 2025 recruits, there's 2 in particular that I think would be interesting, both Texas. There are several other kids I think Florida State would definitely be interested in, but they're like from Nebraska, that area. Those kids are far, far, far less likely to come to Florida State. It's ironic I say that because Nebraska's got one kid in their state that's committed to Florida State, but that's the exception, not the rule. By and large, I think it's going to be a Texas kid or somebody down south of Florida player, et cetera, that Nebraska would lose to Florida State. Here are just 2 of them. There are a couple of Texas kids to take it for what it's worth. Malcolm Simpson, D lineman, again, same kind of deal, 6'3", 255. He's out of Hitchcock, Texas. He's got the size, got the length. If Tony liked him to take him to Nebraska, I'm sure he would take him to Florida State. Likewise, Bryson Weber, corner, Missouri City, just outside of Houston, goes to Ridge Point, 6'2.5", 175 pounds. They like a length at corner, which Florida State does too, and just about everybody, but he fits the profile. Florida State's always recruited Houston. That's not a newsflash. So I expect, technically speaking, Florida State to at least be entertaining those options if those kids want to come. I have no idea. I don't know if they would think about it because, again, tomorrow's signing day. It's kind of late in the hour. They may not have any interest in these kids or vice versa because they just think they should go to Nebraska. Those are just behind the scenes. I have no intel on that. I'm just saying that their profile really fits what Florida State could use, and Tony would probably welcome the opportunity to coach the kids that he's recruited and build a relationship with. So again, take it for what it's worth. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a couple of kids in the portal that I think just in general, they're not Nebraska, but would be very, very good for Florida State, and also kind of a lead-in for what's about to happen because the floodgates have already started to open with the transfer portal. But what's getting ready to happen, I think not many people are prepared for. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the National Football League all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. How much will the portal help Florida State? It needs to be a lot. I don't know if that'll end up being the case, but Florida State needs a lot of help in numerous areas. I'm going to get into the offensive line stuff in a week or two because I need to see more names, but just going to throw it out there. They need 3 or 4 guys. That's not any secret. But right now, defense is what I'm interested in because Tony coming over is a huge deal. The Nebraska defense coordinator becoming the Florida State defense coordinator. It changes Florida State's dynamic. And you got to look at players that fit his scheme. There are a couple of guys in particular on the defensive line that I think fit. I've seen them both play, one in high school and watched him at Alabama. That is Jaheim Otis. If you're going to run any version of the 3-3-5 or the 3-4, whatever you want to call it, a three-man line, your nose guard better be good. He better be big, and he better be able to cause havoc on the interior so your linebackers are not engulfed by offensive linemen. Well, Jaheim, when I first met him, was 360, 370. He slimmed down some before he went to Alabama. He was really big, but now he's in better shape, but he decided to sit out. He wasn't getting along with the new staff or something. I don't know what's going on, but he would be a guy that could come in and play and make a pretty big impact, in my opinion. He'd be a redshirt junior, if I remember correctly. So massive guy, 6'4", 6'5", 330 pounds, give or take. That's a player I'm very, very interested to see where he ends up. I wouldn't be surprised if he went home to play for Ole Miss or Mississippi State. That wouldn't shock me. But again, he fits the scheme of what White wants to run. You have to make a run at him and at least mince words with, what's going on here. Could you be a fit? Why do you want to leave Alabama, et cetera? What happened? You got to do your due diligence, but you cannot teach the size. He had, as a sophomore, 26 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. He barely played this year, then sat out. So I'm not sure what's going on. But again, the frame, the size, all that, you can't teach it. The other guy that I think is interesting, and he'd probably just be a role player, but he does fit in terms of experience and whatnot, and that's Gage Keys. He was a backup at Auburn. Didn't play a ton, but I've been around him. He's a good guy. He's a kid that competes, played hard in practice. Florida State needs numbers on the defensive line. I'm not saying that's a prominent name they might go after, but it's possible. Again, experience, been through the weight room, been through off-season conditioning, good guy. I don't think there's any doubt that you would at least look at him as an option for Florida State. Finally, in this different position, but when I saw his name go in, I'm like, what's going on here? Julian Humphrey, if I remember right, he started some games or was a key member of Georgia. I forget who they got starting at corner, but now they're Houston area kid. Ironically, that area is so loaded with talent. It's ridiculous. But corners at Georgia, they have usually the pick of the litter. And Julian was a high 4-star guy, recruited nationally. He's got length. He's 6'1", 6'2". I would not be surprised if Florida State was one of 20-plus schools that entertained giving him a scholarship. Now, why is he leaving Georgia if he's playing? I don't know. Maybe he thought he should start over somebody. Maybe he doesn't get on with the DB coach. Maybe he got in trouble and he didn't like the punishment. I have zero clue. But again, on the hoof, Julian Humphrey is exactly what you're looking for. And based on where Tony is coming from, Nebraska, they've always recruited the state of Texas. They will always recruit there. He's probably familiar with him as a recruit. Obviously, he went to Georgia, but I'm sure there's at least familiarity. They probably went to his high school and tried to recruit him when Tony was at Nebraska. I'm sure Florida State did too. Do not be surprised if he's at least offered an opportunity to go to Florida State. Just saying. With that being stated, tomorrow, again, I just want to reiterate, there's going to be signing day coverage. I might have a podcast during the day, but I'm going to do a live show. Don't know exactly when, probably 9 or 10 o'clock Eastern time in the evening. Let everything settle and do one show. Answer questions, so make sure you bring in all your questions to the chat. Be happy to go through them, what Florida State got, what they missed on, backdoor stories about who, what, when, where, why, money. Going to talk a little bit about the Keon Coleman situation and his comments that hurt them with recruit. All of that after signing day is over. Again, that'll be Wednesday night. I'm going to guess 9 p.m. is probably about the target date. I got to find out for sure. I got some other podcasts I got to do, helping some other people out and whatnot. But 9 p.m. is kind of the target date for now. It could end up being 10 p.m. With that, please hit that like button and that notification bell and subscribe to this podcast if you have not already, and help me share this pod with as many Florida State people as possible. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for stopping in to see me here at Locked On Seminoles. Really hope you enjoy being a part of this community. And if you want to find me on X and all the different show information and little tidbits that are going on, the best place to do it is at FBScout_Florida. Again, that's FBScout_Florida on X. I will see everybody again on Wednesday.